50% cut as far as illicit and pharmaceutical overdoses. So this is the chart that I really want to get onto here as far as what Bartlesville PD presented. So clearly you saw in there is their fentanyl overdoses are through the roof. We still as a state see our methamphetamine overdoses, at least as of last year, as our #1 cause of death for any sort of drug overdose. Fentanyl is 299. It is rapidly approaching methamphetamine. I've got another chart here that will get you a little bit more detail about that. And we start other drugs up there, our cocaine, our Xanax, Oxy, and heroin and stuff. But clearly our two largest problems are still methamphetamine and fentanyl. And my opinion is we'll probably see fentanyl exceed methamphetamine. Bartlesville's already seen it. We will probably see fentanyl exceed methamphetamine statewide 12 months, 18 months, if I had to guess. This chart right here, this is what is very indicative of where we're at as a state with what we've done as a state in regards to how we're trying to combat our opioid crisis. So before fentanyl, our opioid crisis, our second wave of our opioid crisis was prescription drugs. I mentioned that. If you'll pay attention here, our prescription drugs, most of those are all on the left-hand side here, all the way up to fentanyl, which is there about four spots from right there. Methadone, diazepam, hydrocodone, oxycodone, cocaine's not, but morphine. You'll see on the far left-hand side of a lot of those is high and then it goes down. We're looking at 2017 up through 2022. That's because of legislation that we passed that limited the prescriptive ability of our doctors and our prescribers on how much they can prescribe with some of those drugs. So we put some limits on that stuff to try to reel that back in and try to help combat our problem. And we did in regards to those. But let's look at our heroin. So this is where we'll see right before fentanyl came into Oklahoma, it was 2020, you see, or 2019, 2020, you start seeing your heroin go up. That's because our pharmaceutical opioids were going down because we already had these laws in effect. As soon as fentanyl really hits the scene, 2020, 2021, your heroin starts going back down. What we had there was we had our substance abusers that were out there seeking their opioids that could not get couldn't get to the extent they wanted to from their prescriber, so they turned to other means. We didn't solve our problem of addiction. We just changed how they got their product. They went to heroin because that was what was available, because fentanyl wasn't that prevalent, and then heroin drops off because clearly fentanyl has now just saturated Oklahoma. Quick conclusion. We made great strides, I've just mentioned that, in our opioid epidemic. Now we're in this third wave of our, more or less our fentanyl epidemic. It is an opioid epidemic still, but it is a fentanyl epidemic currently. It's seen in almost every drug available. You see the word carfentanil up there. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. Carfentanil is an elephant tranquilizer. There is no dosage that you could almost really equivalent to what could be acceptable for human use. It is that powerful, 1,000 times more powerful than morphine, if not more than that. I don't know that we've seen it in Oklahoma. It's in Texas, it's in California, it's in the U.S. So it's only a matter of time before we see that. So I think that is it. Yep, all I got. All hot for that well.
Next we have Darren Glanz, DEA agent. Darren Glanz has been with the DEA since 2004, and that is a total of 18 years. Throughout his career, he has been in the Tulsa Resident Office, Miami Field Division, and Kabul, Afghanistan. He was with the Tulsa Police Department for 7 years. Agent Glanz attended the University of Oklahoma, has served 3 years in the United States Navy. Glanz was a Gulf War vet. Please welcome Agent Darren Glanz.
Thank you. I'm just going to mirror basically what my partners in law enforcement in the medical community has said. The problem that we're facing here in the state of Oklahoma and even in Bartlesville is the same problem that's throughout the United States. The role of the Drug Enforcement Administration is to target mainly the organizations that are moving these narcotics and all these drugs into the states and then profiting off of basically our misery. Unfortunately, the problem is getting worse and worse as you see by the numbers in Bartlesville, whether it's in Tulsa, whether it's in Broken Arrow. The numbers with fentanyl just gets worse and worse. So we're just trying to work with the locals and help them combat this problem and also take down the organizations as they traffic this into our communities. Sorry, I don't have any slides.
Our next presenter is Dr. Heath Birchfield. Heath is from Fairview, Oklahoma. He went to Oklahoma State University for his undergrad and obtained his bachelor's degree in biochemistry and molecular biology. Heath went on to med school at American University of the Caribbean. He studied his residency at LSU Shreveport, where he trained in a combined program for emergency medicine and family medicine. Heath Birchfield is the current director of emergency medicine at Jane Phillips Hospital.
Hi there, thank you for having me. As it mentions here, I am new to town. Just moved here with my family, and we're happy to be here and committed to the community. I did just take over as the director in the emergency department here at Jane Phillips, and happy to serve the community and make a difference. Really don't have a whole lot to talk about, because with the fentanyl and pandemic and the opioid overdoses, a lot of the stuff that happened is all pre-hospital. And a lot of the differences that can be made are by these gentlemen that have already really spoken to you up here, that are on the scene when we have the overdoses, that are giving treatment before the patient gets to the hospital. So that when they get to us, if they're alive, we usually don't have a whole lot of trouble, taking care of those patients, because we've already, gotten the most dangerous part, and we have all the treatments, all the medications at the hospital, where we usually have good success of taking care of patients there that have overdosed. The real trouble is whenever they're at home, if they're alone, or with family. It's before the EMS arrive and before the police arrive that can provide the care that is needed. I know Chris here already talked about Narcan, and I can't harp on that enough. If you have a family member who to use substances on a regular basis, I would recommend you keeping Narcan in your home. It is over the counter or behind the counter. You don't need a prescription for it, though I'm happy to write a prescription for anybody. The insurances will pay for it, but it's extremely life-saving to have available. So that's just one thing, but a lot of the issues that I think I've seen in my short time here in Bartlesville is we've had quite a few patients come through the hospital. I think in September alone, our numbers of overdoses were double from the year before. So in September, we don't see near as many. I think we had 24 overdoses in the ER, and the year before we only had 12 in that time. And so just kind of goes to show that I think we're getting more of the fentanyl in our community, and we're seeing more and more overdoses. But from the patients that I've spoken with, a good portion of them aren't intentionally taking fentanyl. They are, a couple I've talked to were going to take their normal, methamphetamine that they typically take, and then they didn't respond to it well, and so they stopped breathing. And our tests at the hospital can't tell you for sure if it's fentanyl or not, but it sure fits the picture as to something that might have been laced in there or cut in there. And then I've had a couple patients who were younger individuals who were experimenting with a pill, but they didn't know what it was, and kind of the same scenario to where they overdosed. And unfortunately, we had good outcomes in those patients, but mostly just can't harp enough on having a Narcan available at home, knowing where you keep it. It usually comes in a box in a kit with two separate applications if you need it. That's mostly it. And usually we can observe the patients, take care of them in the ER, and then help them from there. If they want help with substance abuse, we can work to get those resources. And oftentimes after the medications have worn off and they're stable, after many hours, then we can oftentimes safely send them home, because both the Narcan and the fentanyl only last for 2, maybe 3 hours, and the effects wear off. But that most dangerous time is that very beginning, where it can really cause the individuals to stop breathing. That's when it's becoming the most dangerous. So I can't harp enough on having Narcan available in your home if you have a friend or a family member who uses any substances on a regular basis. And certainly somebody already talked about it, but education to our children. I know I mentioned up here that I've got 2 young kids, 11-month-old and 3-year-old, and I can't say enough about education and keeping your family safe, and having the resources available and the things in your home you can have to keep everybody safe. So thank you very much for having me tonight.
I apologize. We got just a little, I didn't introduce Paul Hawk, criminal justice, has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice administration. He's the agent in charge of the OBN Tulsa District Task Force. Also the marijuana enforcement team. And I wanted to make sure that I introduced him. He's a 28-year police officer of the state of Oklahoma, beginning his career as a deputy sheriff in Ottawa County in 1993. Prior to coming to Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics in 2007, Agent Hawk also worked as a municipal police officer and as an investigator for the District 13 Drug Task Force. During his career at OBN, he has served 13 years as an enforcement agent and 3 years in the Tulsa Division Unit. Agent Hawk was recognized as the Officer of the Year 2015 by the Association of Oklahoma Narcotics Enforcers Association. In 2020, he was assigned to the DEA Rural Task Force, working criminal organizations of rural areas of Oklahoma. In September 2022, Agent Hawk was promoted to the agent in charge of the diversion MET units in the OBN Tulsa district offices. In his career, he is instructed for various courses, including clandestine laboratory operations involving fentanyl production. He has also served as instructor for the Council of Law Enforcement and Education and Training in the state of Oklahoma. Hawk also served 5 years as director of training for the Clandestine Laboratory Investigators Association and has presented various topics concerning the production of illicit drugs in other states. He is also a member of the National Association of Drug Diversion Investigators.
Do you have any words you'd like to impart?
Bo and I work for the same agency, so we've got the same slideshow. I just wanted to say how impressed I am with Bartlesville, the community. Every time I come up here, the community is always, there's a big turnout. You guys are interested in the problems in your community. And, I've been a Clan Lab guy for a lot of years. And we saw the wave of methamphetamine come and go. And although we still have a meth problem, the meth labs are gone. And we saw the pill mills come, and they've gone, and now we're seeing the fentanyl come. But if we come together as a community and if we push toward this goal, I know that we can overcome this. And I just want to tell you guys, I appreciate you coming out tonight.
I saw that Agent Hawk worked for Ottawa County, and I cover Ottawa County and Delaware County and some things like that. And the impact in these rural areas is huge. And a lot of these smaller departments, they don't have resources. They don't have manpower to combat this. And thank goodness we have the OBN to step in and help out. Our next presenter is Dr. Larry French. He's a clinical supervisor at the facility serving over 1,200 clients in northeastern Oklahoma. Larry has been in the private practice in the Tulsa and Bartlesville area for the past 10 years, working with clients with co-occurring disorders. Larry's participation as a Division I athlete has influenced his conceptual framework for what he considers therapy. Larry blends holistic life coaching, mentoring, proper cultural grounding, spiritual practice, nutrition, and physical balance into a unique blended approach. Larry's work includes aid in mental health, addiction, and practices for coping. Larry also does metaphysical and pastoral work for individuals and couples as well. Please welcome Dr. Larry French.
It's a pleasure to be with you guys this evening. I didn't want to necessarily spend a whole lot of time. You guys have gotten great information from my fellow panelists here this evening. But I thought it important for me to actually be with you and to come and sit. I feel like as on the therapy side, I get a unique seat. I am a clinical supervisor, and sometimes that means the burden is almost doubled. Sometimes that just basically means that what I do is I staff with counselors or therapists who are working on their license. And usually that involves cases that are talking about clients and patients and their issues related to addiction, related to mental health struggles. And then being in private practice, again, I still see individual patients, both individually, and I do some group education as well and group therapy. And so I have a unique seat, so sometimes at the end of the day, I have to go and wring myself out from all the stories you hear. The fentanyl epidemic has been something that has been quite almost insidious in that the numbers, escalation of the cases, clients and patients taking you ways and saying, I did not take fentanyl. And at the beginning of this, hearing this, as therapists or as counselors, they would hear this and they would think they're not telling the truth, they're being untruthful, and then to find out that as the time went on, that fentanyl was everywhere and everything. Even if you were taking, something like marijuana, and that was something that you took, that it was being laced with fentanyl. You were taking, again, like has already been mentioned, you were taking methamphetamine. There's fentanyl in it, and so a lot of people, unbeknownst to them, are taking this opioid, and it's a challenge, it's a problem. The one thing that I will share that's sort of a model to give you guys something to think about is when we are dealing with people that have issues with addiction, there's what we call, there's a little model that they like to use that talks about the phases of change. And I'll just mention those as may be familiar to you. One of them is what they call a pre-contemplator. That's somebody who doesn't realize that they have a problem yet. So sometimes people, on television shows, they may say something like, popularly, you'll hear people say, this is somebody who's in denial that they have a problem. And then they talk about the contemplators. The contemplators are people who realize that they may have a problem, but they're not necessarily ready to do something about it yet. Whatever has brought on the contemplation, whether it be a problem at work, internal struggles, depression, mental health issues, but it has gotten them thinking about the fact that I may have a problem. Sort of like the gambler who's about to lose his house. Maybe somebody's about to lose their family, and they come in and they say to me, the man or the husband may say to me, my wife told me I better come in here, or the divorce papers will be served. There's something that gets them to wake up, and that's a contemplator. And then you get into the phase of determination. That's somebody who's determined that I actually do have a problem, and I need help addressing the problem. And this is where somebody like myself comes in, or facilities like I get the opportunity to serve at work and partner with to try to offer some help. And then there's the action stage, that's where people who are actively working on getting help, whether they're going to inpatient, which is a challenge when you're talking about something like fentanyl, because you have to have sometimes a supervised detox, and places, not everywhere you go has a supervised detoxification to watch somebody detox. But they're ready to take steps, whether that's going to counseling or therapy or NA or AA or Celebrate Recovery. So they're in the action stage of change. And there's the maintenance stage, which sometimes some of you guys may have heard of something like a Suboxone, or going to a doctor, or methadone, which is, you go somewhere and you're being maintenance to try to stay, you're being maintenance to feel normal. And for some people, that's the challenge when you've gotten addicted to an opioid or an opiate. To feel normal, you take the medication, something like Suboxone or methadone, just to feel normal, to go about completing your daily routine, or to go to work, or to function, so that you don't feel like you're going through withdrawal that can almost feel like you're about to die. And then some people like to say that the last stage, they like to throw in there, depending on who you talk to, is relapse. You see relapses even from people who have been in maintenance for a while. They may relapse, or as they say, fall off the wagon and have to get back on. So all of those are things that somebody like myself sometimes has to try to assess as you listen to the stories, and you try to help, and you try to sit with people and to help them piece back together broken pieces, things that have fallen apart in their lives. So I am here with you. Sometimes on a daily basis, I do feel with you and people that come across my path, and I theirs. So I appreciate you guys being here, and I'll be open to taking any questions that you guys may have during question and answer time. But thank you very much.
When we started thinking about Narcan and the opioid epidemic and everything else, when this first came to light, it really hadn't hit Oklahoma, but we'd heard things about Narcan and the opioid overdose and things like that. So I really didn't know much about it. My wife Nancy and I, we knew that it was bad in the Massachusetts upper East Coast area, when I was kind of doing some research. So when we traveled up to Salem, Massachusetts, I always go places and I trade patches. I like to get police patches and trade. So I went into the Salem Police Department and, got a patch and started asking about, the Narcan stuff. And the guy just nonchalantly told me, he said, yeah, we ran on a guy 4 times in one day on 4 overdoses and administered Narcan until he walked over into another community and overdosed again and died. Just like it was no big deal. And I really hope that we don't get there to that extent in Oklahoma. I don't know, it's just kind of concerning. Our next presenter is, I believe he's, is it District Attorney-elect or District Attorney? Elect. Will Drake is the District Attorney-elect for District 11, Washington and Nowata counties. Will graduated from Skytook High School in 1999, did his undergrad work at OU, graduated in 2003, went to OU Law School, and graduated in 2006. Will worked at Cleveland County's DA office during law school and has worked at the Washington County DA's office since October of 2006. He was promoted to first assistant in 2007. Drake he will be the district attorney-elect taking office January 2nd, 2023. Will Drake has prosecuted felony cases with an emphasis on sex crimes, child crimes, and violent crimes, including drug trafficking. He has tried over 100 felony jury cases. Please welcome Will Drake, District Attorney-elect.
All right, thank you, Jim. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I'm pretty excited. I don't use my name next to a list of experts. I'm going to frame this right here. I'm pretty excited about that. Usually it's in jest when I hear an expert in something. So I've had a lot of good information tonight. My point of view, what does the DA's office do? My discussion is more about the drug selling and drug trafficking part of fentanyl. Give a little history of this. In 2017 was the first time I ever heard the word fentanyl. I was aware it was like used in, for cancer patients in hospitals, things like that. My first thought is, how can anybody recreationally use fentanyl? And it was just coming on at that time. So in 2018, Oklahoma passed a law to make fentanyl to be able to possess it in a quantity to be drug trafficking. At that time it was greater than 1 gram. What you think about 1 gram doesn't sound like very much. Well, you've seen pictures up here today. 1 gram could kill everybody in this panel right here. Kill us all dead. In 2019, the legislature decided that that wasn't enough. They made a new statute called aggravated trafficking of fentanyl, anything greater than 5 grams. Again, 5 grams, that's not very much. 5 grams of marijuana, that's nothing. 5 grams of fentanyl could kill most people in this room right here, if not all of us. So that gives you an idea of how fast fentanyl has gone from being something no one's really heard of to being the epidemic that it is right now. So, you think about when we were in the DA's office talking about fentanyl years ago, we're like, how could anybody take something that's so potent and something that the supply is so limited at that time? Well, now the supply is huge. We talk about people every day in Highway 75, someone brings fentanyl in Bartlesville. Every day it's happening. And the problem of catching them is fentanyl is so popular, it is in someone's person as fast as it hits the town. Methamphetamine, you catch it all day long because it's not as popular in greater quantity. But fentanyl is such a hot drug, it is hard to catch in quantity. So in 2019, we had our first fentanyl drug trafficking case. 2020, because of COVID, McGirt, things like that, we had 2 or 3. 2020, it starts getting interesting. We had 4 drug trafficking cases. 2022, we've had 10 so far fentanyl drug trafficking cases. Earlier this year, we had our Bartlesville PD, OBN. They busted a guy here in Bartlesville, about a mile from this building right here, with over 1,000 fentanyl pills in his house. In that house was 3 minor children, in that same house. And this person had been busted 2 times before for trafficking fentanyl. So this is how prevalent it is in this community in Bartlesville. You heard a lady testify earlier about her son dying, Mr. Barnes. We had an overdose death, Mr. Toth, who died at the Walmart parking lot in the gas station, Murphy's gas station, in October 29th, 2021. It took us, as I said, it takes a while to get a result from the medical examiner's office. It took about 6 months. We finally got what we thought was going to happen, that Mr. Toth had died from a fentanyl overdose. During the entire time, Sergeant Ward, Officer Lemons, the OBN, they were putting together an investigation to prosecute the persons who had sold Mr. Toth that fentanyl pill. So earlier this year, the DA's office, we filed what at the time was the state of Oklahoma's 2nd fentanyl overdose murder case. We're currently prosecuting that right now. Can't get too into the facts of it, but to prosecute someone, what I mean is we're taking someone who's a drug dealer. They sold someone that fentanyl pill and they died. And we're charging that person murder 2nd degree because of that. It is an incredible undertaking to investigate that case and to charge that case. It is a highly circumstantial case. And it's how it's always going to be because we're dealing with drug dealers, people who are not in the outside of society, not our best citizens, obviously. But our office, Bartlesville PD, OBN, the Sheriff's Office, we're doing what we can. The message I want to say here is we need some help. We need help in this community. If your neighbor you know is selling drugs, you call the police department. Let us know what's going on. We're not going to knock on the door and say, hey, Bobby Joe next door said you're selling fentanyl in this house. We're not going to tell them to do that. But we need your help. We need to identify who's selling it, where they're selling it at, so we can go after these people. Because they are selling poison. I was talking to the OBN about this last year, about how can people sell such a potent drug? What's crazy about this is, if you're a drug dealer, you sell fentanyl, And one of your customers ODs, dies of that fentanyl, guess what? You think, well, he's out of business, right? If McDonald's sells you a Big Mac and you die, that McDonald's gonna have problems the next day, right? Not if you're a fentanyl drug dealer, your business increases. You know why? Because everybody who uses fentanyl knows, guess what? That guy's selling the real stuff right there. So it's horrifying to think about that. People are getting almost a benefit if their product harms somebody. So think about the kind of people who are selling fentanyl in this town. Also, there a note I wrote down here is that back in October 2021, fentanyl pills were going for about $30 a pill. It was about $5 a pill, Andrew? $5 to $7 a pill. That's how much the supply has increased in Oklahoma. That has dropped that much. That's the only thing I know it just dropped in price in the last year. So, what I'm saying is, folks, we're doing our best, but we need your help. We need your help to, tell us what's going on in your community. Call us, let us know what the situation is. And if you see something like this, you know something, say something to somebody. Thank you all.
Here in just a second, we're gonna open up, for questions. But I really would like to give a hand to these individuals that came up here with their expertise to share. And a positive with anything of this subject, Washington County Wellness, Jennifer Glenn, Hannah Garrett are back there with the table. They have tons of information with fentanyl, the effects, treatments, and things like that. They worked really hard, and tomorrow they're putting on a 5K fentanyl awareness run and trying to get people as much education as they possibly can. So I'd like to give them a hand for showing up here. One of the ways that we're going to have to do this is everybody's kind of stressed as a community is you're going to have to be educated, you're going to have to be aware. And that's how, as a community, we're going to be able to come together and do the best we can. So, I think we're going to get a mic, and if you have questions, let me get a mic and I'll run it to you. No, that's the one that warms up. Who else has questions? Yes, sir.
Mine is for Mr. Drake. Sir, you mentioned that the fellow got busted, a third time for fentanyl? What were the circumstances surrounding the first two incidences where he was at home and not in jail?
Well, I'll stand up and talk about it. I talk about it. So he was